Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today in our third and final part of the Starting Your Own Business Without Going Broke or Crazy series. This program will focus on branding and winning work. I just wanted to let you know that the two previous events are recorded and can be found in the MTI website and YouTube channel. I'm gonna introduce my co-moderator, Eleanor.
Thanks so much, Itzel. My name is Eleanor Leschner. I'm a transportation planning and policy consultant in the Bay Area. I recently started my own business and I'm really excited for the discussion today. Thank you.
Thanks, Eleanor. All right, just wanted to point out that this is a effort between MTI and WTS. So we will begin with a high-level overview of the event. We will try to fit in as much information in the hour we have together. First, we'll hear from our experienced panelists about their strategies for winning work as a small business, developing their brand, and building their client base and businesses over time. We also have a panelist that works for a large firm and will speak to the approach her establishment takes to work and partner with small businesses. We will then move into an interactive Q&A based on the audience, what you guys most want to know. I do encourage you guys to ask questions throughout the event in the chat area or the Q&A, and we will get to them towards the end as time allows. I do want to say a few things about WTS before we get started. No matter where you are in your career, WTS has opportunities for you to learn and grow. We have mentoring programs, leadership programs for people early in their careers. We also have professional development sessions that are geared for everyone, whether it is about interviewing, networking, or building your brand. And every year we do donate $60,000 in scholarships to high school students and college students interested in careers in transportation. MTI, the Mineta Transportation Institute, is a leading institute for research on transportation. MTI's mission is to increase mobility for all by improving the safety, efficiency, accessibility, and convenience of our nation's transportation system. MTI's work includes an extensive research program, education and workforce development programs, and conferences, webinars, and professional training programs. All right, and with that introduction, I'd first like to invite Rachael, Keish, and Vignesh Swaminathan to share their experience growing their businesses over time with a focus on strategies for winning work, developing their brand, and building their client base. Rachael is the CEO of Keish Environmental, which she started in July 2014 and has since grown to 13 employees. The firm provides program management, stormwater oversight, environmental compliance, and construction management services. She recently bought a horse to get outside and get in shape, and his name is Lorien, which is Lord of the Rings Elvish for Maker of Dreams. Rachael?
Thank you so much, Etzel. Well, I started my business, took the leap, as it were, and it very much felt like taking a leap. It was something that I didn't go into lightly. I had thought about it, noodled on it for probably 5+ years before I went out on my own. I had 15 years experience when I finally made that decision. And it was really based on wanting to expand my horizons, wanting to explore more options, career options in my specialty, because my specialty is environmental engineering. And where I was at, that wasn't the firm's focus. So looking at your brand and where the firm was going, was I going to have those career opportunities? On the bright side, you're the CEO and everything is your responsibility. That's the good news and the bad news in your own small firm. So that was why I went out on my own to try to have more opportunities and really have that career path. The sky's the limit. What we think of, I think, when we look at brand building, right? We think logos and slick marketing materials. I did have some slides here because I think this is what we think of. Winning work is, oh, we're going to have a slick presentation, right? These are some slides that I prepared for. This is what my firm does. We are qualified. We do these things, and what's unique and different? Can everyone see my screen? Okay.
Yes.
So this is what Keish Environmental does, and it's very important to be highly qualified, know what your firm does, what your services are, have a look, feel, those types of things are about branding. I do environmental compliance. I'm passionate about water resources. sustainability. Those are areas of work, and those burrowing owls, adorable. You know, I want to make sure that the environment and habitats are protected. But what you do isn't who you are. And it's not your brand. It's not really how you win work. How you win work is by meeting your client or customer needs. Why would they want to work with you specifically? Why your business? And so that's what I learned. It's about relationships. Really, business development and marketing are different. Even when I went out on my own, it's who you know, not what you know. But I'm an engineer, and we really want it to be about our technical qualifications, and I'm going to be the best engineer ever. And I'm going to be, anyway, those are the things that we want it to be, a meritocracy. But the winning work doesn't start in the case of professional services when that request for proposals hits the street. It's very much before that, about relationships that you build over time. Why do they want to work with you personally? Who knows and trusts you? And whether it's a prime and you're a subcontractor and you say, I'm going to deliver this, I can do this, you can, but what makes you the best at it? How can you best meet the needs for XYZ? And so having those relationships, networking with WTS and other professional organizations, those have really been key in developing that track record for performing the work. And there are a number of lessons learned along the way, especially as a small business, because there's always concerns about capacity and how do you grow and expand into different service lines, because of course you have to have done the work before to do the work. You have to have the people in order to get that work. So there's always that balancing act that you face as a small business. So I think when I was invited today, I definitely wanted to share some of my experiences as a small business owner and some of the resources that are out there. So for me, it was definitely about relationships and leveraging the relationships that I had at the time, trying to really put myself out there, try to meet new people and new potential business partners. Keeping, as a small firm, you're more nimble than some larger firms to be able to make those quick decisions about how you can do work and where and in what way. But then there's also that flip side of being nimble and making those decisions, the business operations side of making certain that financially you can make those ends meet and planning on it. Like I said, this was not a split-second decision for me. I spoke to other small business owners, tried to get their advice about, one of them said, you only need to know 2 words, cash and flow. Try to understand not just paying the bills and keeping the lights on, but how planning for growth. And as a small business, how do you compete with larger firms when you try to prime? And having employees, I don't want my employees to have to choose between my firm and a larger firm when it comes to very important things like healthcare, 401k, vacation benefits. Those are really, they are costly, and it's challenging as a small firm to try to keep up and to make sure that you have that and offer those kind of benefits. And I wanted to make sure that I could do that. So those are kind of things along the way to keep in mind, but there are resources also out there. So yeah, those are some of the things that I face. I don't want to hit my time, but those are some of the key things that when I was getting started and building my client base and trying to win work that I wanted to touch on.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm excited to hear more about your lessons learned and more experiences. I do want to remind the audience that you guys can put questions in either the Q&A or in the chat area, and we will get to them at the end. Thanks, Rachel. All right, next I'll introduce Vignesh. So Vignesh is principal in charge and project manager at Crossroad Lab and has over 10 years of experience in municipal and transportation engineering. He has worked with municipalities, resource agencies, and Caltrans to plan, design, and deliver much needed bridge, roadway, and infrastructure improvements throughout California. He focuses on designing transportation projects such as bike paths, protected intersections, bridges, corridors, and interchanges. Vignesh specializes in all aspects of transportation projects, ranging from transportation studies, to construction documents. He has formed a reputation in the industry for developing complex intersection geometrics to solve difficult transportation challenges. He maintains a thorough understanding of the transportation project delivery process, planning, and capital improvement. All right, Vignesh.
Thank you, Itzel. Hello, everybody. My name is Vignesh Swaminathan. I am the CEO and president of Crossroad Lab. Some of you may have seen me on TikTok and on YouTube and Instagram under the name Mr. Barricade, where I have 1.5 million followers and over 1.3 billion views, where I discuss transportation infrastructure and design and delivery. I started my firm about 5 years ago with the umph of knowing that the industry was moving towards protected bike lanes. And I also had a lot of frustrations with how project delivery was done. I mean, in the industry with design, bid, build, I quickly saw that a lot of projects that I had worked on at my previous firms were not going to get delivered, and because of the cost that were to the city. And so I kind of coined a format called Quick Build that does a lot of community outreach in with the field, working with different communities, especially minority communities, on their needs. And I learned how to skate around certain environmental reviews and to have my projects delivered. And I'm proud to say that every one of my projects has been delivered in less than 10 months, and we've had a great success record in our project delivery. My drive came from my knowledge of many different disciplines within the industry. I started my career as a parking engineer and event coordinator for downtown San Jose, where I planned out marathons, festivals, and events, and quickly saw how cool it was to change the culture of a road like Santa Clara from a busy roadway to a place where people could eat, drink, and play and thrive in the street. Then I went to go work for a highway consulting firm and learn all the ins and outs of Caltrans delivery process, and also many of the follies of Caltrans delivery process. And with that experience, I started Crossroad Lab. I also sit as a chair of VTA's advisory committee and the chair of Cupertino Sustainability Commission, which gives me a broad range of perspectives on how city government delivers projects, analyzes projects, and also spends money. With that experience, it's helped me develop a practice of Quick Build. A little bit about what Quick Build is that we do a lot of these pilot projects where we work with the community on using their local materials and using materials that they may have, like little planters from the community. We work with a lot of community-based organizations. We also deliver permanent installation using solar-powered units, paint, and posts. And then now our firm has grown to actually getting full civil projects. So I started my firm mainly focused on quick build projects where we do paint and post, and now we're getting hired for full roadway reconstruction, new roadways, signal timing, curb extensions, and more. Through my process, I've had a lot of lessons learned because I started moving towards becoming a prime consultant. And being a sub-consultant who has a lot of overlap with a lot of different disciplines, and especially doing something very new. And I also doing something very new. I learned that a lot of firms had not seen this type of work, project delivery, or even design before. And I learned kind of the hard way that there's a lot of overlap, and there's a lot of firms that would want to hire us to build a practice of their own. And so through that process, I now mostly prime opportunities than I do sub opportunities. That's mainly because I'm doing a full civil project delivery. We've also written a book with NACTO that you see on the right called "Don't Give Up at the Intersection," and it's a technical guidance that I helped write. That is for many engineers like to leave the liability onto the user by making the bike lane go dashed or not doing the actual intersection design. And so we created this document to kind of circumvent the standard, that the standard has not been released yet. And so I put my license on the line for quite a few different things to kind of nudge the industry forward. Through this process of doing so, I've had a lot of success delivering projects for many different communities, especially minority communities where maybe other consultants or cities don't know how to deliver projects or don't know how to communicate with the community. And I've also approached it from many different angles, including my social media, where I use short form video as a form of community outreach. And I also make many videos that show off my personality to kind of level out the playing field for people in the community. I don't want it to be scary government coming doing scary things in your neighborhood. I want it to be like that I am from your neighborhood and I understand the different aspects, and I maybe like the same music as the people that I'm working with or serving. And that way it's kind of provided me a unique approach to this industry. And many of our clients hire us for that purpose. They hire us because we know how to communicate with the community. The community wants us. We know how to deliver projects. We're able to make projects a little bit more custom, or maybe even bend the standards a little bit to be able to deliver something very unique for a said community. And I also know how to communicate to both the state about the different bending of standards, know how to communicate to the community with short form video, and know how to circumvent and avoid certain environmental reviews. That's how I've built my practice.
Thank you for sharing that, Vignesh. It seems like communication, including your social media, are very successful platforms. If anybody has any questions for Vignesh, please feel free to post them in the Q&A or in the chat area. All right, and now we will head to Mydria Clark. We have also invited Mydria, is an HNTB Supplier Diversity Manager, to share their perspective of how a large consulting firm partners with small businesses. Mydria is a Supplier Diversity Manager for HNTB's Northern California offices. In her role, Mydria is responsible for monitoring HNTB's contracts for compliance with small business participation goals and fostering relationships with the small business community. Her philosophy is to go beyond checking the box, and she does this by leading outreach and mentoring activities that support the growth and success of local, small, and disadvantaged business enterprises. Mydria is also co-chair of the WTS San Francisco Chapter's Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Outside of work, Mydria is a proud blurb, and you can find her deeply engrossed in Star Wars and Marvel content. Mydria, welcome.
Thank you, Itzel. I'm really excited to be here to talk about one of my favorite subjects, and that is supporting small businesses. I'm also proud to say that in HNTB's Northern California office, we have a person, it's me, dedicated to actually working with small businesses, which is something unique about the approach that we take. When it comes to teaming and partnering with small businesses on projects, our approach includes smart teaming and expanding our networks. One experience I've heard from many small firms in the past, usually in reference to on-call contracts or bench contracts, is that they'll join a team and get no work from the prime. To avoid this, we team smartly by keeping our teams small and nimble as possible, so that to the best of our ability, every team on the firm gets work under the contract. Now, sometimes the client may take work out of the scope or decide to self-perform work. And in those cases, firms may not get work under the contract, but to the best of our ability, what we can control, we do try to give firms the work. We also we work hard to understand each firm's full set of capabilities so that we can engage the firms in as many areas as we can. Sometimes clients add new scope of work, and so we look to our current teaming partners first to try to provide them with those opportunities. When it comes to expanding our network of teaming partners, like other consultant firms, we do partner with firms that we've had successful working relationships, but our approach is a little different because we also make a concerted effort to work with firms that we have not worked with before. And that's how we expand our network of small business teaming partners. We recognize that there are a lot of small businesses out there who are very qualified and they just need that opportunity to get their foot in the door. And we are very open to providing that opportunity. We host annual small business outreach events. We have one coming up in June, where we get to know, we invite firms that we haven't worked with before to get to know our firm and our PMs. And then we also spend most of the time hearing presentations and elevator pitches from those new firms so that we get to understand your qualifications. We keep these events rather small and intimate, again, so that we can really understand the qualifications and experiences of the small businesses that participate. We also engage with small businesses at industry Meet the Primes events and pre-proposal meetings. And we offer firms the opportunity to come into our office or virtually give our staff a lunch and learn presentation to present your capabilities. One piece of advice I would offer is that you should make as many touch points as you can with prime firms so that you can build that relationship. I suggest being politely persistent. And what I mean by that is making sure you find that one contact at the prime organization that you can build a relationship with. Ask them if you can keep in touch with them at a certain cadence, whether it's monthly, bi-monthly, but make sure that you're keeping in touch regularly so that you can hear about upcoming opportunities and opportunities to meet with staff so that you can continue the relationship. That has happened. That's other firms that we've worked with have used that strategy, and it has definitely worked. It has taken time. It could take 1 or 2 years, but it has worked for firms that new firms that we have brought onto our projects.
Great. Thank you so much, Mydria, and all the panelists for sharing your wisdom with the group. I think with that, we're going to move into Q&A. So I want to invite all the panelists virtually to join me on the stage, and we'll kick off a couple of questions here. So I had one question, and then we'll get to, well, we've heard a few questions in the chat, so maybe we can start there. People have been interested in, how long did it take for you to get your first project? This would be a question for Rachael and Vignesh. And, did you need to have a big budget to start your business? If you could speak a little bit to that, your journey from starting your business to getting to your first project.
I guess I can start. I did start part-time first, about 6 months before I went full-time, and took business law, business taxes classes from SCORE. They're a great resource. They're for retired or various small business resources give classes. They have all of their resources published. So definitely reach out to the SCORE chapter in your area. So I took those classes, tried to educate myself some on what would be needed. But my situation was a little bit unique in that I was kind of seconded staff on a large project. So I was able to be very straightforward with my employer then. I had the relationships with the client, and I said, hey, there aren't these opportunities within the firm, within my discipline. I want to keep this a very good working relationship. I would like to be a disadvantaged business enterprise sub back to you. I had already formed my business enterprise and had my fictitious business name. I let them know that there'd be no conflict of interest. So I was very upfront and straightforward 6 months before I went out on my own that I'd be doing this part-time after hours, that there wouldn't be a conflict, and that I would like to sub back to them the work that I was doing then on a large project that consumed most of my time. So I didn't hire until after a year. I didn't want to have employees until I really had it figured out, because that's a big step. And there's a lot of forms and taxes and things associated with that for employers. Maybe I waited too long, but that's a different story. So in my case, it wasn't winning the project first. I was able to sub myself back. Having the small business certifications definitely helps, because they're able to add firms who are small in some cases definitely more easily than in some other cases. But as far as do you need to, how big a budget do you need to start? That definitely takes some planning. So I don't know if that's a separate question, or Vignesh, if you want to go, we can come back to that.
Sure. When I started my firm, I really was very new to this whole space. I didn't do as much research as I could have, and I started mainly I'm a technical engineer, and I can deliver projects, and everybody who works with me knows that I can deliver projects. But I did not start my firm with a big Rolodex of contacts or more. What I did is I mainly just used my skills of delivering freeway interchange projects on whatever work I could get. And so I did a lot of driveways, I did a lot of curb ramps. I started working with folks who just needed a little bit of permit to work with the city. And I started really small. I actually started with a AutoCAD student license, so I didn't have to pay for a lot of AutoCAD myself. And it built up my expertise, or at least just ability to deliver small projects like through that. I got my first big break because I also knew about project delivery, and I saw an opportunity where the city of San Jose specifically was not going to spend their money as wisely as I thought. They were going to do a huge paving project, and there was nobody in the city of San Jose who was able to redo design when they do paving. They usually just hire a paving contractor, and then they go and put back whatever they find out there back into kind. And it's a lot of money that they spend on that. And I went to the city meetings. I showed them that, hey, we can do something differently. I did a lot of free work initially to kind of push it. One of the secret strategies is I put my logo in the middle of every single CAD drawing that I did. So when the city would copy my drawings to show on their internal presentations, there was a big fat logo of mine in the middle of the intersection. And people were like, what is that? Is that a green bike lane? No, that's this guy's logo. It's like, why is that guy not here? Oh, we stole his work to kind of present it internally. And so and then I got brought in for that, be like, hey, how could this work? And then so you're just wedging yourself in between different things. With that project, everybody was saying we don't have money, so I went and I found the money, and I found somebody who's willing to come and fund the project for the city of San Jose. So I kind of tackled it from all different angles and kept being at all the meetings until I got the job, which was the downtown San Jose Better Bikeways job, where we put in around 16 miles of protected bike lane throughout the city of San Jose. For me, when I started it, I knew I had CAD licenses. I knew how projects get delivered. I knew how folks do have meetings. I knew that they don't have money, and I kind of came in with an answer for every single reason that someone would say no. This kind of started with my roots in activism when I was a teenager, going to council meetings and more. And I use that same form of activism in a form of actually helping my clients out with project delivery. That was one of my first big breaks. But before that, I was just doing driveways and curb ramps and permitting for fire for homeowners that needed to do a grading permit or more. And so I'd say for anybody who wants to start a business is start small. I did not leave when I left my previous firm. There was so much overlap between what I delivered for that firm and what they do that there was no way that they would hire me as a sub. And so some different. I managed most of the projects out of the San Jose office at that time. And so when I left, there was a lot of scrambling on their end to figure out who to do those projects, but it was not something that they could sub out. Because there's so much overlap in terms of what their core my previous firm's core deliverables were and what my expertise would do. After doing that project, I marketed that project quite a bit and then was able to successfully deliver that in multiple cities since then. And most of my I used to go after a lot of proposals, but now I mainly go after work of people who reach out to us. It's a lot of effort to go after a proposal, and if you're not playing the marketing game, when a proposal comes out, they already know who they want to hire a lot of times, and so I started just making sure that my work speaks for itself, and people who reach out to us to go after jobs, and those are the few that I do focus on. But when I started my firm, I started with a very small budget and student licenses, and delivered a lot of late nights and a lot of free work, and just kept stacking up the money from small projects until I had enough money to hire an intern.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing those examples. It sounds like in both of your cases, relationships and then maybe persistence were really part of that first part of getting your first project. We did have a follow-up question. I don't know, Rachael, if you had a quick response to what are 3 most important steps to get your first project as a new business, maybe 3 words.
Planning ahead, and planning ahead way farther than you would think. I'll share really quick. Some agencies, or if you're doing publish these types of look aheads. This is Caltrans, and like Vignesh just said, this is the when the look ahead was created, and so these planning and look ahead forecasts. Some agencies will plan these out, like Caltrans, months or years in advance for, in this case, professional services. Others don't. But planning ahead, because the teams, the larger the pursuits that you're trying to get on, you're trying to win, the farther in advance they are teamed up, And like you said, people want to work with who they know and trust, and you have to know the firms that are likely to be priming if you're trying to sub. If you're going to prime it, you have to have your team set up. So 3 things, planning ahead. I agree with Mydria wholeheartedly, that polite persistence, because can I get this? Can someone give me some work? Can someone, like, that's not at the top of their agenda. It might be at the top of mine. How can I get more work today? But it's definitely not the thing that the larger firms are going to wake up. And then being certain that you follow up. It's challenging when you're trying to win the work, do the work, market the work, manage your mission, business operations. And someone had a question about the benefits and other internal running and quality delivery and all this technical expertise. It is a challenge to juggle all these things, absolutely. And you want to have hire the right staff and resources to help you out at the appropriate time. So
yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Rachael. I want to bring Mydria back into the conversation as well. I wonder, with these questions about getting your first project or just starting out, do you have one piece of advice that you would give new or aspiring small business owners when they're starting out and seeking to partner with larger firms? I loved the anecdote you shared about polite persistence. Maybe anything to add to that?
Yeah, actually adding on to what Rachael was saying, and again, always both Vignesh and Rachael said, don't wait until the RFP comes out. That's like one of the most important things. But also understand your client, whether it's the prime or the agency. Understand, when it comes to prime consultant firms, understand the work that the prime does and the clients they work for. So if you are an environmental firm that focuses on water treatment plants, you wouldn't contact HNTB because HNTB is a transportation consulting firm. So just make sure that you are tailoring any of your marketing material or anything that you're sharing with firms, or any opportunities you're presenting them with, to what the firm actually does, because it's really important. Also, in addition to the look ahead report that Rachael showed, you can also look at an agency's capital improvement program, or strategic plan to see what they have coming up in the future. I know that does take time, and small businesses have already enough to work on. But if you do have time to do that, that's a good way to understand what the agencies have coming up, and also to understand what the prime firms might be going after in the future, so that you can contact them about that. And again, just getting in front of the prime as much as possible, so that they are keeping you top of mind, as long as you're doing it politely. And then just a last bit of information, Rachael showed her capabilities, or her presentation earlier, and it really clearly communicated what she does. And it's really important to be able to do that. I've seen lots of capability statements that just kind of list a bunch of words, and it doesn't really show, like, this is what we've done, this is who we've done it for. So if you can clearly communicate your capability and your experiences to the primes, you have a better chance of being added to a team.
Great, that's super helpful. We've talked about already how important relationships are in building your client base and winning work. I wonder if we can unpack that a little bit as a group, and how have you, I guess, built relationships that have led to work later on? Rachael, you mentioned going to WTS events, for example, but maybe share some success stories or lessons learned about building those relationships.
Well, Vignesh gave great examples about, he was doing free work, but then that turned into something because he was passionate about it. So when you're passionate about something and you're doing good work, it's noticed, and you will inevitably leverage that. So like marketing in the name of the job, because you're doing a good job on this project and you're interacting with a large number of stakeholders, that you will see that it's you're laying the groundwork for future work. So that's definitely not to be underestimated. Every project you take on, once you win one, it doesn't matter how small it is or how challenging it is. I've worked in very challenging situations where, it's in construction, I'm the compliance person. Everybody loves to see the environmental police coming, oh boy. But the people who called me back after that project were the contractors, who maybe I thought we had very contentious relationships, but I was, keeping my cool, being professional. This is the requirements we have to meet. We just need to get through this. So my advice would be to do every project that you do, to the best of your ability. We're all human. We're all gonna, everyone is trying to get through projects together in the most challenging situations. And so there are times when you're winning work for the future that you might not even know it. There were some very contentious meetings where someone who called me later to come in and give a training class to them in stormwater, which is one of my specialties, said, you really handled yourself well in that meeting. It seemed like you were under fire and you were trying to explain to people who didn't want to hear that. So there are times when you may be, those are times where you're winning the work by doing the work. So those are some situations where doing a good job every time. And but it isn't only that, it's also thinking about and putting effort into developing your relationships with those stakeholders on those projects outside of just the normal 8 to 5. So yes, the WTS events, trying to expand the folks you talk to and your business network. I think those are both equally important.
Yeah, I would add that someone gave me some advice many years ago of when you work internally with your boss, or who do you figure out who your boss is. It says, like, you have to like your boss, you have to want to become your boss, and you have to do your boss's job. Is someone told me a long time ago. And that way your boss moves up and then you move up with that. And that's something that I've held holy whenever I even go after work as a sub or as a client I have to like my clients. I have to and I have to be able to do their work for them. And so that's something that has helped me build relationships with especially public sector staff or even private sector staff, is if you're able to not only deliver projects successfully, but also help them figure out where their money is, help them figure out how to communicate to their own coworkers, help them communicate to their own bosses, right? Then it helps build a relationship. There's so much that can happen. There's so much that can happen when the person who's your project manager gets a promotion because their work was done. And a lot of times when I work with city staff, they may say, hey, we have a project, but we have no idea where the funding is going to come from. Or actually, our DOT does not even talk to public works or planning or fire, right? And if you can be that person to be that communication for them and get it delivered and make them look good, that's how you build a relationship. That's how I found. So I always put myself into their shoes and understand that, hey, if a city staff person, they may not feel comfortable walking across the hallway to another coworker, and you have to be that person for them. And so there's a lot of hand-holding and work that I've done to make my clients look good. Not only with themselves inside their own group or within different departments, but also with the community, making sure that they look good with the community, and that kind of heat is taken away from them is something that I found to help me deliver projects well, and also help my clients feel good that they are delivering projects. I will say though, there are times when somebody you build a relationship with cannot be there for you, and you have to be ready for that. I've had a few jobs where people that I build relationships for suddenly drop the ball on my scope items or the budget that was dedicated for our firm, and so you have to be ready for a lot of these challenges that do come up. So as much as you want everybody to be your friends, sometimes there's people who just forget or just are just not inept in certain things. So you have to be ready for it all. And so I say build as much relationship you can, but always tread lightly, and be ready for the worst, because the worst can come. And when the worst comes, it can come from multiple fronts.
I'd also suggest participating in a mentor protege program. That's a great way to build a relationship. We participate in Cal Mentor for District 4, but Caltrans has Cal Mentor programs throughout the state. And through that program, you would get paired, as a small business, you get paired with a larger business who can give you advice on your business development and marketing, your financial setup, or how you do program management, anything that you need advice on. As a protege, the mentor can help you with. And just want to give you an example. There's one firm that we've worked with. I actually met this representative from this firm when I was at a different firm, so before I started HNTB, and just happened to run into them all the time at different industry outreach events. And so we just continued that relationship. And then I saw them at a CalMentor event. Before we actually set up our mentor-protege relationship, I invited the firm to come to our open house or our DB outreach event. And then they also gave our staff a lunch and learn presentation. And so through all of these different touch points, got to know more people at HNTB. And that helped convince everyone that, yes, this should be our protege firm through CalMentor. So we went through the program which is a year-long program. And now they're working on 2 of our contracts. And I often share other opportunities that are non-HNTB opportunities with small businesses as well. And they ended up on a large construction contract for Turner, which is like this, like more than $1 million for them, which is great. So again, through either mentor protege program or just all these different industry touch points, that's how you build a relationship over time.
Thank you for all of these, anecdotes and insights. That's really helpful to just hear your guys' experience. We have gotten a couple of really good questions from the audience, and we'll encourage folks to keep adding your questions if anything else comes up. One question I see here is more of a follow-up for Rachael about when you started your business and you're working part-time, maybe if you could just briefly comment on how you negotiated, like whether there really was a conflict of interest with your previous firm. It seems like there was a question about that. And then also just add, there's also a question about managing other areas of the business like insurance, accounting, liabilities, compliance with rules and regulations. And I encourage folks to check out the second part 2 of our webinar series, where we talked about kind of the practical steps for setting up your business, including insurance and accounting a bit. But if you could touch on that, Rachael, and then Vignesh, if you have any other thoughts.
Yeah, if you're currently at a firm and thinking of going out on your own, most firms have policies as far as conflict of interest. And so I looked at that and made certain that what I was contemplating doing would not be, joining another team as a sub when the firm I was with was planning to go after this pursuit. One of the reasons I was contemplating making the shift was because those pursuits in my discipline had been no-go. They were not pursuing them, consistently not pursuing the areas of work that I was focusing on. And so that I could see the writing on the wall, that the areas that I was focusing in were not going to be a focus for that firm. And I needed to make that switch. So I would say it isn't just the after hours. It was just that I wanted to emphasize to them that it wouldn't affect my day-to-day work going out, and then to have a smooth transition plan and an amiable one, so that they would be able to and be willing to sub back to me, so that I maintain that business relationship and not have bad feelings there, because you can leave a firm and take work with you, and that can leave poor feelings. And it's a very small industry, and I don't think anybody wants to be in that situation. So logistics, yes, definitely check out the second webinar, but some of the most challenging things I think for small firms are the accounting, insurance, liabilities, all of the forms for employers, the state requirements, meeting those, making sure you're making payroll tax payments on time. I have, and in the case of specifically public agency, the accounting that's required for Caltrans is a huge and a heavy lift. There's some assistance with definitely the CalMentor program has been a big help. I'm a graduate through that one, and I'm currently a mentor on another large project to HNTB, and they're assisting with marketing and business development type issues. Whereas the CalMentor program was more the nuts and bolts of the financial processes to get in place to develop an independent cost rate. But there are not many accounting firms that know how to do this. And when I go to CalMentor meetings, I mention this. I ask for assistance for small firms for how do you understand how prevailing wage rates work, and assistance with these detailed forms. In my case, SCORE, like I said, was a very great resource. And also just asking other small firms for referrals for insurance purposes, their broker, because brokers then will search the market for you at a really reasonable rate, find, okay, well, this is the best insurance policy, because insurance for professional liability, errors and omissions is a big cost. And I'm pretty risk averse. I didn't want to, you can as a small firm ask for an exception from these large liability policies, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to run the risk that someone would slip on some mud and say it was because the stormwater plan and come after my kid's college fund or my house. I just very risk averse. So I'm insured to the full policy. So that was my risk. It's a risk-based decision. There are definitely resources out there. I don't want to take the full time, but there are definitely some resources. SCORE is one of them, and they can help point the way as well.
I'll add that this is an ongoing learning process as you work with bigger and different projects and larger firms and stuff like that. I originally went through the Cal Mentor process, to be honest with you all. But then at the time, the way I started my firm, I have so much overlap with these larger primes that I couldn't find a good mentor that would want to work with us. Most of them wanted to work with firms that maybe are one discipline. So if anybody's going out to start their own firm, I'd say maybe focus on one discipline and kind of make sure that you don't have a lot of overlap with the firm that you're working for right now. And then when you go start, maybe focus on that one discipline thoroughly. Whereas when I started my firm, I focused a lot on design and project delivery, which what everybody does, right? And so I couldn't align myself well with a mentor in Cal Mentor program, and so I look to, as I grow a little bit more, to come back to that program and see if I can find a mentor firm. I'm still but yeah, and I think it's more. I felt it was more set up for firms with multiple people and a little bit who have been delivering projects, and just as soon as you freshly start. I also say I became a DB, SB, MB, LD, all of those, but I also found that process has not been as rewarding because of the overlap. A lot of times the larger companies will go to new areas, like let's say if it's firms that want to get into the Bay Area, then they'll go fund a bunch of minority small consultants to go team with as DBE, but you don't actually know how many that they chose, and you don't know how much that they promised to who. And so I've had many times when I get brought in as a local San Jose, local minority consultant who knows the community well, and then I end up not getting any work because the DB percentage goes to another firm that maybe is one discipline. So I have not pursued that as much as I could, just because of the amount of overlap that I have with a lot of these firms. So the main way that I grew was just keeping my rates low, keeping my costs low, undercutting folks, and delivering faster. And so our clients have learned that's what we do, and we're very successful in delivering projects that way. To manage a lot of the insurance and more is I am paying for the utmost of errors and omissions insurance. I learned that I have to do that because I had volunteers and children in the street painting the road with art and stuff like that. And so that's when I for that purpose, I learned that I needed to have the utmost insurance to have different communities and folks out in the street. But that is something I didn't expect in the beginning. I thought I could just I didn't need to pay for that utmost, but I learned that I have to pay for that for the project, and so that covers all of our bases when we do our work. In terms of just affording payroll and stuff, just making sure you have enough cash on hand for that, and always planning ahead and chasing money down. A lot of times when you work for a prime consultant, they won't pay you until they get paid, and they may not get paid on time because of poor management or mismanagement or just whatever's going on with the public agency. And so after they get paid, then you have to wait your 60 days, 30 days to get paid. And I have many primes that just say, hey, we haven't got paid yet, but they just haven't got paid for what they want to pay us, And so you have to kind of go pursue that a lot. You end up learning that a lot of these larger firms, they are very disconnected from who's managing the project, who's in the purchasing, and who's actually writing the checks. And so you end up learning a lot of hand-holding through all that. Working with large developers is the same thing, or even facility managers are even worse, because the facility managers, they're just managing the facility. They're not actually managing the budgets and the fees and the payment. So there's a lot of hand-holding and a lot of polite persistence needed with every aspect of these larger firms or public agencies. So I tend to shy on being more of the prime and paying subs in my space. just because of our overlap. We work with a lot of community-based organizations in the area that like working with us, and I've built relationships with them. To be honest with you, I've mainly focused in my firm of building relationships with different minority or cultural groups throughout the area. And when the cities want to go do work in those neighborhoods, then they work with us because we have the ones that community likes to work with or knows. And a lot of my projects as part of the community outreach, I also approach it from a community-based organization perspective. So I'll allocate maybe 10 grand or 25 grand to that minority group to pay them to do the outreach for us. And so we work with many Black, Hispanic, Peruvian, Vietnamese organizations. And I don't do the outreach for them. I pay them and teach them how to do the outreach for their own community to enable them. And that's kind of a different approach to where I see the industry going, and I've focused on. And so a lot of times cities hire us because they feel they're disconnected to their community in East Palo Alto or East Side San Jose. And we've been able to how to be that bridge. So I mainly let our work and outreach speak for itself when it comes to building my relationships with firms. A lot of times in firms and in cities, there's a lot of turnover, and the community there's not that much turnover. So I've learned that for long-term projects that I work with the community is where the industry is headed there. And I've used that to kind of grow into doing more aspects of civil engineering than just project delivery. And I look to use that model to continue to grow my firm into many different disciplines here in terms of design, permitting, environmental planning, and data management for our clients.
I know we're almost out of time. I just want to address one thing that Vignesh said. If you do find yourself in a situation where your capabilities overlap with prime consultant firms, we do look for, there's still an opportunity to team there because you might offer a service or a product that you use or just a different approach that the prime isn't taking that is really unique and something special that we would like to offer to the client. And also just everything you just said really showed me your firm's value system. And if your values align with the prime firm, that's another way that you can connect, even if your capabilities are similar. And I definitely want to talk to you more now, Vignesh, because of everything you just told us. I didn't know that about your firm before. So.
Thank you. I will also add for everybody listening is it's a catch-22 when you do that. I've had work with prime firms that do use our project delivery or design to build their own practice and then cut us out of our own market. So I just wanted to warn everybody that does happen in this industry. So you may bring in a prime from out of state or out of the area to come in and work with the community that you've built a relationship with, and then they'll copy all your work and hire a bunch of people and then cut you out of your own area and your own clients. So it's just, you have to make sure who's the right firm and make sure they have good ethics as they want to come in and they actually want to support you and want you to survive. Whereas there's some firms that maybe I've worked with that are more in the bicycle pedestrian space that really just wanted to cut us out of our own area. And so I think I'd recommend to work with firms like HNTB and other firms that are more broad, that maybe are not as your direct competitor. And I've learned that through this process.
Yeah, that's a great lesson learned, cautionary tale to raise. I want to make sure we just get to the last two questions that we received from the audience real quick. I know we've already discussed quite a few outside resources like SCORE or the Cal Mentor program. I put something in the chat. NorCal PTAC has been very helpful organization for me getting started with my business, as well as SBDC. There was a question around resources for small firms, thinking about hiring employees and employee benefits. In 30 seconds or less, can anyone, share any resources about when you're thinking about growing your firm and employees?
As far as being able to afford healthcare benefits, again, I was guided by the recommendations of my broker for E&O and my insurance. He referred me to another small business broker who does more of the healthcare market, who was informed in that area and how other small business employers were providing healthcare. Seeing what was on the horizon, this is pre-2016, and seeing what was coming in affordable healthcare or lack thereof, I made a conscious decision, and working with another, and again, it was based on a referral. So any PTAC again second that, and other small businesses to ask other owners, get referrals to, because the brokers who, especially in those kind of specialized industries, they'll know best. They're able to kind of search the market and say, okay, well, here are your HMO, PPO, those types of benefit options. And the same goes for 401k providers. You can go with a right-sized plan so that there are fewer fees. And then there was one question: how is it to work as a part-time consultant before going full-time? In a word, exhausting. So be realistic about, burning the candle at both ends. You only realistically can do that for so long. I'm a type A's type A ever. And yes, I mean, we've all burned the candle at both ends, but that you really want to be realistic and have some life-work balance. We say work-life balance, and we get those in the wrong order a lot. So be realistic. It is a challenge running your own business. And if you are part-time, keeping those boundaries and trying to juggle all the things I mentioned earlier, it is, you really need to prioritize for yourself and make that decision, plan for that uncertainty, which is, it's something that you have to build into when you're making a small business plan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the last question I was just going to ask, someone had a good one around, how do you plan for uncertainty or in these kind of challenging and uncertain times? So I want to close this out in a minute, but if anyone just had 30 seconds to address that question.
I think it's an ongoing process. I do a lot of work myself in this firm, and so if there's an uncertainty or something that doesn't happen, or employees out with COVID, I know that I can do all their work as well. It's not maybe the healthiest answer, but I do spend a lot of time in my office, and I do spend a lot of sleepless nights, and there was many years where I didn't have health insurance, and so I would say just understanding how much of it you want to put into the office. I started my firm as a single man with no kids, no relationships, still struggling with maintaining relationships because of the firm. So I'd say just making sure you know what you're getting into, and know how much time you want to put into it, and make sure you're really, really passionate about what you're doing is really, really the biggest driver. Because you're going to have folks internally who don't deliver. You're going to have folks who externally don't deliver. You're going to have times when somebody quits who you're working for, and now you don't have a local champion, and so you have to be your own local champion, knowing what you're getting into. It's not all smooth sailing, but they say the only people who are going to support you are your family and yourself, and sometimes it's just yourself. So you just be ready for all of that when you get into this space.
Agree, the buck stops here, but you can mitigate some of that with cross training, and I've made some mistakes in hiring, and I've made some great hires and some great lessons learned. So when you're building your team, getting the right people on the bus and cross-training folks to try to help you get through those cycles and be more resilient as a small firm, you can lighten the load and delegate too.
Well, thank you guys so much for your perspectives and sharing this today. And thank you everyone for joining us. We do have a couple quick announcements about our upcoming events. If we can get those up on the screen. But yeah, just really want to thank both the panelists and the audience for your questions and making this event, as engaging as possible in the virtual format. And so we have a couple of exciting events coming up, both from WTS and MTI, and they will come up on the screen, or we'll email you about them afterwards. So this is the last installment of this series, and we will be circling back with a link to the recording, and you can check out some of the previous recordings as well if you're interested. So thank you everyone so much for joining us today.